What kind of super student will you be? Welcome, 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 welcome to L.I.F.T Tutoring. To L.I.F.T Tutoring. Welcome to another video by L.I.F.T Tutoring. Love, instruction, foundation, teaching. Kindergarten Readiness. What kind of super student are you? Welcome to L.I.F.T Tutoring. Welcome to another edition of L.I.F.T Tutoring. Today, we're going to talk about something very close to me. Many of you are wondering about my background and where I come from and what my experiences are and where I've lived and how I got to this point in time in 2018. So my name is Jeremy White, and I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, and I did not actually grow up in Memphis. I was only in Memphis for about a year. My father's job traveled a lot. He used to play football. His name is Reggie White. And so when he originally started playing for the Showboats, I was born in Memphis. This was the USFL. When the USFL folded and the NFL had a supplemental draft, he got drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. So we moved to a small town right outside of Philadelphia in New Jersey. So I lived in New Jersey off and on, and I say off and on because we only lived in New Jersey during the season. I lived in New Jersey until I was about 7 years old. 7 years old. So after he became a free agent and went to Green Bay, we moved to Green Bay, and then we started traveling we did Green Bay during the season, and then we would be in Tennessee during the off season. We were living right outside of Knoxville. It was a little town called Maryville. We lived there until I was about 11, and then we moved to Ohio to be closer to my mother's family after my father had left the Packers, and we lived in Ohio for a year, and then we ended up moving to right outside of, moving to the greater Charlotte area, and we moved there in 2000. We, contrary to popular belief, we actually were planning to move to Charlotte before my father even knew that he was going to play for the Panthers. He was actually, at the time, looking at possibly the Redskins or the Titans, but we ended up with 1 year with the Panthers, and then he retired, and I've been living in Charlotte since 2000. So I did my high school years in Charlotte, and I did my college years at Elon University, where I got a undergrad in communications and journalism, and I graduated in 2008. That was in Elon, North Carolina, EU, and which is right outside of Greensboro. For those of you who need a bigger city to have reference to. After Elon University, I had nothing necessarily tying me down to North Carolina. I was looking for a job, but that was during the housing crisis, or right after that whole thing happened, and I decided to look up jobs in Japan. I had wanted to actually go to Japan since I was 9 years old. Had always been interested in anime and the video games. That's not Japanese video game, but just for effects' sake. And I remember actually my dad had a preseason game there when I was 9, and I told my mother I want to go to Japan with Dad, and she didn't really want me to go, and so she told me, well, if you learn Japanese, you can go. So she got me a CD-ROM. I put it in my PC, I booted it up, and then, the hiragana came up and it said, konnichiwa, and I was like, I can't do this. I was 9 years old. So unfortunate to say, I didn't get to go to Japan at 9. So at 22, I realized there was an opportunity for me to do it. I didn't have to know Japanese. I didn't have to have lived there before, and I was able to apply. Ended up applying, flew out to Chicago for the interview. There were 14 of us. 3 of us got called back. The for the second interview, 2 of us got hired. And so I was now headed for my life in Japan. The idea was to only stay there 1 year, do the contract, and that was what the idea was. So knowing that I had got hired, I actually started working at a daycare here in Huntersville, North Carolina, Cornelius, right there in Huntersville, and I worked there for about 4 months, and that is actually the daycare in which I started telling the story of Estelle and Gustav. The kids started asking me for a story, and it was right near pickup time, so we're just kind of waiting for the parents to come pick them up. And kind of the last thing of the day, me and another teacher were in there, and I just started telling the story. I was listening to, at the time I was listening to the British singer, R&B singer Estelle, and I don't know where Gustav came from, but I started telling the story. It was fun, and it actually got to the point where the parents started showing up early to pick up their children and not actually take their children home because they wanted to hear how Estelle and Gustav ended, because their children were going home saying, Mr. Jeremy, because at the time I was Mr. Jeremy, not Mr. White. Mr. Jeremy told us all about Estelle and Gustav. So I worked there for 4 months. Back in high school, I had worked at a daycare over the summer before I started Elon. So I had, and during my Elon years, I actually was a Zeta Phi Beta sweetheart, Z5, and we went to the local church, and we used to volunteer with the kids there. So I was still involved with children a lot during my college years, and that passion, along with Japan, made it so that I had an opportunity to not only teach children but also go to the country that I always wanted to go to. So the plan was a year, and then I renewed, stayed where I was for about 4 extra months, and then applied to that company that only caters to children, that company's sister company, which allowed me to kind of not burn out teaching 6, 7, 8 classes a day, 36, 37, 38 classes a week, with just children, age range from babies. I taught for like 1.5, and it was mostly kind of a mommy and me class to learn English. From 1.5, I taught all the way up to high school, and then actually a couple of their parents too at that school. But I decided I wanted to not burn out and still stay in Japan, so I applied to the sister company of the English school that I was working for, and I ended up working there for almost 2 years. It was about 22 months. 80% of my classes were adults and 20% were children. A whole lot easier to teach children than adults. I found that out because even though the adults were paying for the English education, some of them did not necessarily want to do what you had asked because they're adults. But then they wondered why their English wasn't getting better. So simple things, homework, pronunciation practice, all sorts of stuff. So after that, I got an opportunity to work a little bit more normal hours, because these 2 private schools, the children's one was 10 to 8 and the other one was 12 to 9 on Tuesdays through Saturdays, since we were mainly for the after work, after school crowd. So I got an opportunity to work at the public schools, in which I taught at 6 elementary schools and 1 junior high school for 2 years. And I lived in a small town, and I was living right outside of Hiroshima. So I was in Hiroshima for about 4 years total, because I taught at the adult school in Hiroshima and I taught at the public schools in Hiroshima. So it was fantastic. And then me and my wife met over there. We met in the English, the adult English school at the time, and we've actually been married for about, goodness gracious, 6 years, a little over 6 years. Now we reside in the greater Charlotte area. When we moved back in 2014, I went to UNCC for my master's in elementary education. Ended up graduating in 2017. Started teaching in 2016. Sorry, not 2016. The fall of 2015. 15, 26, 27, 27. Yep. And then this past year taught at Brisbane Academy. So 2 years of public school, 1 year at a private school, private preparatory school, and now we are in almost halfway through 2018, and I am leading and founding a kindergarten readiness program, L.I.F.T tutoring, love instruction foundation teaching, because I saw a need that there were many children that are ready to have a kindergarten curriculum before the state or district says they are old enough to have a kindergarten curriculum and start in public schools or a private school that they go to. So I wanted to be able to continue my passion and continue to make a difference in children's lives and keep enjoying exactly what it is I do, and let my personality of video games and anime and superheroes still shine bright, so that I can relate with my students, even though I didn't just get into those just to relate. I got into those things because I was genuinely interested in it. I'm 32 years old, but I'm still a big kid, big responsible kid. So that's kind of my life in a nutshell there, and I'm really excited about this new endeavor, and I'm looking forward to starting this school year with children around this area. And I will also be, continuing to make videos and podcasts and IGTV videos, YouTube videos, Facebook Live videos, Spreaker is a podcast, that the format that I'm using, because I do want to allow others to see what it is that you can do to help your children get ready for kindergarten readiness, be ready for first grade readiness, second grade readiness, just those foundational years. That's where my passion is really at. And I enjoy what I do. I love what I do. I wake up every morning, and there have been times where I have woken up and I didn't feel the best, and I knew I was gonna see my students, and I instantly was better. And there is almost no greater feeling. When you put the time in as a teacher and you see your students growing. Side note, in any future videos, when you hear children, I'm meaning my students. I don't have any kids, and if that does come up, I will definitely let you guys be the 20th in line to know, because the majority of my family will have to know first, and they'll be beating down the door to ask about that. So, but when you see your children make growth, your students make growth, it's a time in teachers' lives and throughout the year that you just kind of sit back and go, okay, I'm doing something. Because sometimes it's almost like you're going over things every day. You're trying new differentiation strategies. You're doing different things to cater to different children's interests. You're reading up on things you're not necessarily interested in, topics you're not necessarily interested in, so that you can engage students in new and exciting and different ways. And it sometimes still seems like it's not working. And then that one day they come in and they say, I get it. Here's why. We've been at this for however many days, but I'm happy. So I look forward to going on this journey with you all, and I look forward to hearing you all's feedback. Please, send if you're If you have questions, please leave comments on YouTube. Maybe I'll be able to answer those questions, in a video. If you have anybody who's getting ready for kindergarten and you want to know some best practices, things you can do at home, but I'll be making those kinds of videos as well. So hopefully in one of my videos or podcasts, I can answer your questions through that. So if you are interested in L.I.F.T tutoring and you live in the greater Charlotte area, info@lifttutoring.net. You can find more information at www.lifttutoring.net. And if you want to buy a wonderful, amazing, fun journey of a book, you can get Estelle and Gustav on Amazon. Estelle and Gustav, Gustoff for Gustav. It rhymes with off, Gustav, and I won't give away the ending. So, so if you are interested in that, if you're interested in a signed copy, you can email estelleandgustav@gmail.com and send me your address, and I'll send the information on how to get that to you. So I appreciate your time, and that's just a little bit about me. And remember to keep developing a love for lifelong learning.